This is my most requested method. Whether I'm teaching, installing, whatever it may be, I always get asked questions about Genius Weft. My name is Sam. I'm a hair extension specialist and I've been doing hair extensions for over 13 years. I've also taught other stylists how to do hair extensions. In fact, I've certified hundreds across the globe. In this video, I'm going to be covering all of my tips and tricks and technique behind that Genius Weft hidden row. What to do, what not to do, how to stack and layer all your different colors, how to color match, beading, sectioning, everything that you need to know that goes into that Genius Weft install. If you do hair extensions already, or you're a client looking for the technique that's going to be the best for you, make sure that you hit that like and subscribe button and turn those notifications on. I post new content daily and I'm totally driven by education. I'm so passionate about extensions and doing extensions the right way. I'm going to get straight into it. I've already sectioned off my model. So now I'm going to show you that beaded foundation. Okay, so I've already prepped my model. The first thing that I did was just give her ends a bit of a dusting. This is something that I always like to do before a new install. I always like to do this at a maintenance appointment, so more like a reinstall where I'm taking everything out and reinstalling. The reason I do it is just to make sure that I'm keeping the hair nice and healthy. You never want to let those ends get wispy, because then what's going to happen is that hair will break, especially if it's getting tangled with the extensions. And then when you take the hair extensions out, you'll notice that you've lost length. So I always want to make sure that I'm keeping the hair healthy by trimming it in between regularly. All right, so I've got my Covey coloring here and I've already started to pick out a few different colors I think are going to work. So what we're looking to achieve with this install is to match her up to her color that she has, and then also add in some pops of blonde. So we've got a few different colors here that I like, and these are kind of what we seem to lean towards the most because it matches her ends really nicely. But then with some of the shades, I'm able to add in a pop of that blonde by still keeping it a little bit dimensional with these shades. If I wanted to, I could add in a little bit more depth, because as you can see, she's got more depth going on. But because this is a volume install, I'm focusing more on brightening her up as opposed to keeping that depth in. If I was going in and adding a lot of length, I would have to have depth. Otherwise, there's going to be a disconnect between her natural hair and the extensions. So for example, if I was going in and doing 24 inches, then I would want to mimic these colors as well as these lighter colors. So the colors that I've narrowed it down to are going to be truffle, hot toddy, and sable. And I'm just going to hold that up so you can see. So we're keeping close to her ends with this truffle shade, and then we're able to add in some of that brightness with the hot toddy, this one here, and then the sable shade. The reason that I love the sable is because it's still got some of that dimension, because it's more of that kind of like highlight, low light shade, and it's rooted. And then I love this one, hot toddy, because it just brings a little bit more brightness. And then this one is going to be pretty much her perfect match, which is going to be truffle. So now I'm going to begin my installation, and we're just going to do one row for volume. So this would be the perfect way to add volume into your client's hair and also some pops of color. So I'm just doing one row and I'm going to show you how I section off for that one row. So I'm going to start by just doing a straight part all the way down the middle, and that will just take me to the neck here. She's got a lot of hair, so I'm going to use clips just to kind of clip stuff out of the way as I go. And then I'm going to start that row about here, and then I'll bring it round, making sure that I'm working about an inch above the ear here, because I want to make sure that she can still wear her hair up if she wants to. And then you can see I am doing it a little higher in the back, and that's because it's only one row. If I wanted to do 2 rows, then with this row I would bring it lower so that she gets more coverage in the nape. But like I said, we're not really worried about creating too much coverage because it's just volume. So we're just doing it to add in density and that pop of color. All right, so once I've carved out that first half, I'm going to do the same on the other side. This is just a rough part, but I just want to make sure I've carved it out, and then I can go in and clean it all up with my hairspray. So I'm just going to mimic this exactly the same on the other side, and then I'll have my section meet here, and I'm just making sure that it is nice and even with this side here. So now that I'm happy with that, I can just flip that up. I've got my foundation now. I'm going to kind of neaten it up a little bit, and I'll show you exactly how I do that. So I'm going to take it out from the clips and then just make sure that this is all nice and neat. And out of the cleaner your section, the better, because then you're going to have an easier time when it comes to doing your beaded foundation. So now, can you see all of these little hairs? I want to go in and get those out of the way. So how I'm going to do that is I'm going to take my hairspray. This is Sexy Hair So Touchable. So it's a weightless hairspray. So this is not going to be strong hold, and I don't need it to be. I just need it to be strong enough to keep those flyaways at bay. If I use a stronger hold, I feel like once you go to brush it out, you see buildup and residue. Rather than this, it's super lightweight. So I'm just going to go in, spray that section, and then now with my comb I can just carve it out and clean up, and then I'll twist her around and then just do the same all the way around, making sure that I'm getting all of these little flyaways tucked back. The more time I can spend on this now, the less I have to worry when I go to doing my beads. I just like to make sure that everything's out of the way. Okay, happy with that. Now I can just spin her around and then clean up. And you can see how much neater and cleaner it looks just by taking this extra step. Some clients have more flyaways than others, so it's really important that you take the time to make your sectioning really, really neat. So I'm happy with that. It looks really, really nice and clean, and it's ready for me to go in and do my beaded foundation. Now I'm ready to begin my beaded foundation. It's really your preference where you begin it, whether you want to begin it here or in the middle. My preference is I start in the middle, I work my way forward, and then I do the same on this side. With your Genius Wefts, it's not super important that you measure out. It's not like a hand-tied weft. You can cut these to size. So I always like to do the foundation exactly how I want and then have my wefts pivot around that. So I'm going to start off by sectioning off, and I'm going to drop down and pick up the first section for my first bead. My section is usually around the width of my thumb, and I feel like that's the perfect amount of hair. If your client has thinner hair, you might want to drop down a little bit more, but I don't like to drop down too deep, otherwise your wefts are going to sit so far down. I find that if they've got finer hair, it's just a matter of you putting less wefts on the row. And then I'm just going to clamp that down into place. And I always like to do a little flip up, because you want to make sure that you've got movement up and down and that you don't have any little crosshairs in there. Now I'll do my next one directly next to this. And again, your preference. If you want, you could even carve out your subsection first and then go in and then just slice out the beads afterwards. I just prefer to do it like this. I find it works really quick and really easy. And again, just flipping up, making sure I've got really good movement. You don't want those beads to sit too tight. So what I'll do now is I'll show you a bead that is too tight. And what you'll notice is you're going to have elevation, and then it's going to be really, really tight to your client's scalp. So the first week or two, it's going to be so uncomfortable. So I'm going to just squeeze it up too tight. And you can see immediately she's got elevation within that install. It's not lying nice and flush like this. And then when I go to move it up, it's going to be pulling under here. So it's really tight and uncomfortable. If that happens, all you have to do is with your pliers, you'll have these little holes. These are Hair Made Easy pliers. And I'm just going to go in and unclamp that bead, and then I'll just drop it down to where I want it. Much better. I always like to make sure everything's nice and neat and clean and even. Again, using that thumb as a reference. You want to make sure that your pockets of hair are wide enough so that you can drop your needle down through the pocket either side. And then any little crosshairs like these ones, I want to make sure I'm getting rid of. And you can see I'm using my index finger to support that bead. And then with my pliers, I can drop it down to where I want it. Going in, pinching that hair through the looper tool, and then sliding that bead up into place. And then just supporting it with my index finger. Take out that little crosshair there. And then with my pliers, that's when I can drop it down to where I want. Another thing I do is I don't keep too much tension with this hand. I don't want to pull and squeeze on the scalp. Can you see what that happens is? If I pull like that and then I clamp, it's going to bounce back up and be too tight. I like to make sure that I'm not having too much tension here, because in that way she's going to have that free range of movement. So the beads that I'm using are my preferred bead, especially when I'm I'm doing Genius Wefts, I like to use a smaller bead, and these ones are from L Pro hair extensions, and they're the 2mm by 4mm bead, and they're in the shade Jet Black. I love these because what you'll notice is the silicone is also black as well. So when you go in and clamp that bead down, when the silicone pops out, it's exposed, but it's black. You don't see that ugly white silicone. So it works really nice on your darker haired clients. I also like that they don't chip either. Always making sure that I don't have any little crosshairs. That is definitely the key when working with wefts. They can become really uncomfortable and damaging if you have crosshairs within that foundation. When you're clamping down on your beads, it's really important that you're doing it tightly and securely as well. You don't want to not clamp down enough and then leave that bead prone to slipping. So it's important that when you clamp down, you do it in a way where it's going to be really secure. So I'm going to finish here, which is just where that ear starts. You might be able to work closer to the hairline, but with my model, she's got a lot of baby hairs. So I want to make sure that when she wears her hair up, you're not going to see that weft. If I was to finish the weft here and do another bead, when she wears her hair up, you would see that corner exposed. So I'm going to end that row at that point there, which is just a little bit more than an inch. Kind of ignoring the baby hairs, then it would be an inch away. And now that I've finished that side, I can turn her around and then continue my foundation to this side. I like to make sure everything's nice and clean. Don't have anything in that section that I don't want in. And I'll always just kind of check throughout. And then now I can probably do just around 2 more here, 1, 2, and then that will take me to the end of this side. Whenever I do a Genius Weft install, my preference is always to do a hidden row. You do have the ability to stack them one on top of the other and do just like a standard traditional row, but my preference and the way that I feel like Genius Wefts are best used is by doing the hidden row. That way you're able to distribute the weight not only on top of the bead but also underneath the bead. I also find that it feels a lot flatter this way as you don't have multiple wefts stacked 1, 2, 3, 4, and then it feels really bulky on top. So that's the way that I'm going to show you how to do it today. So now that I've done the beads, I can go in and flip up those beads, so then I can lay my first Genius Weft underneath. So I'm going to take the end of my tail comb and I'm just going to take up these beads, making sure I don't have any crosshairs, and then I can just clip those out of the way. And then I'll spin her around and I'll do the same here. Clip that out the way, spin her around, and then I'll do the same on this side. So it's just 1, 2, 3, 4, and then just clip those out of the way. These clips are from L Pro hair extensions, the little gold ones. I absolutely love them. They're perfect for when you're doing your Genius Weft install, and I like to use a lot of them. So now that everything is clipped up, that's when I can lay that first weft underneath. So I've already cut this, and now I'm just gonna scoop it under here. And then I know that with these corners, I'm gonna fold them back on themselves. So I'm just making sure that I have enough room to fold. So now that I'm happy with that, I'm gonna grab my little gold clips and I can just begin to pin that down into place. I like to do a little clip through every pocket, and then I'll just clip up this part here as well. That way it stops that weft from slipping down. Really important that with your Genius Wefts you're doing this, because it's not like a hand tied where it has that return hair on top. It can be a little bit slippier. So it's important that you really make sure you're going in with your clips, keeping that weft up high and tight, so that when you go in and start to stitch, you're not going to be struggling looking for where that layer of weft is. I always like to count the layers as well, so that as I'm stitching, I can make sure that I am getting 2 or 3 or 4 layers with that stitch. If I don't see, 3 wefts and I know there should be 3 there, then I know one of them has probably slipped down. So this shade here is my middle shade, I would say. So I like to make sure that that is going under, so that when it folds back on itself, I see that little slither of color. I wouldn't want to put my darkest shade here, because then if I did, I'm not going to see enough of that color around her face. Most clients, you're going to notice the majority of their brightness is going to be around their face, and the depth will be more towards the underneath of their hair. If I feel like the weft is dropping, I'll just go in with a clip under as well, and then just here. Perfect. So now that I'm happy with that, that's when I can go in with my second layer. So now for my second layer, I'm gonna just measure it up, and I want it to sit about 2 beads back. So you can see now it's sitting about 2 beads back, because I like to stagger and layer all of these different wefts. I don't want to put so much weight on this anchor. The most I ever do usually at the anchor is under and over, and then as I come here I'll have another weft, and then as I come here I'll have another weft. I stagger them back like that so that at the more delicate areas of the head, which is always towards the front, I don't have too much weight. And now I can just flip that into place. Always like to make sure that I'm stretching these wefts out as well, because you don't want any rippling within your install. If you're not stretching them out enough, then you'll notice they will begin to ripple, and we don't want that. We want them to be nice and tight and flush. So now that I've layered that one, I can go in and unclip these little beads and then flip them down. And I'll just flip those down, and then with a clip I'll just go in and secure them. Same with this, flip everything down. If I need to readjust anything I can, and then just pin them down. Don't ever be afraid to readjust, because it's only going to help you. Spin, flip these down, and then just pin them into place. So now that's all secure, I can go in and put my final layer on top. So for this install, I'm just going to be doing 3 layers of weft. You can do 4 if you want, but usually I feel like 3 is the sweet spot, and it's not going to be too heavy. So I really want this brightness to pop through, so I'm going to place this on top here, and you can see it goes to that second bead, which is exactly where I want it to lie. I actually already pre-cut these. We've installed these in my model's head before, so they're like perfectly cut to the size, but usually that's how I like to cut them. So now I can just go in and just pin that final layer down. This helps me keep track as well. I feel like I always pretty much do it the same way, because then I know exactly where my wefts start and where they end. So then when I come to sewing everything down, it's easy for me to keep track of the layers. For example, I know it's going to be 3 layers here, and then the 3rd layer will end, and then it will just be 2, and then it will take me to the 1 here. And then I leave those corners as they are, because what I like to do is I like to stitch first, because I know that that weft is going to give as I sew, because these are stretchier. So I like to leave that open, leave my final stitch here, and then I'll fold that back on itself. That way it means that I'm not pre-folding anything. I'm risking that corner sitting out too far. So I'll always stitch like this, and you'll see as I go through why I've done that. Now I can begin to sew everything down. I'm going to use this thread. It's from Lush Pro or L Pro Hair Extensions. They actually just rebranded, and this is the shade Jet Black. So I'm always matching my thread to the beads and to the root color. So as you can see, she does have a darker base, so I used a jet black bead. And then for the thread, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just matching it up. I do have the option as well to use the espresso brown thread. That would also work really well. But I feel like because I'm in between, I'd rather go with the darker of the two, because I know that it's going to blend really, really well. So with my thread, I'm using a single thread, and I'm going to do 1 wingspan, because I know that's going to give me enough to complete the row. Now I'm going to take my needle. Needle size is your preference. The bigger the needle, the less control you have. It might be more comfortable if you've got larger hands, and the smaller the needle, the more control you have, but it can be a little bit fiddly. I feel like this is more like a medium size, which is in between the two, and it works perfect for me. And this is just from Amazon. My favorite needles are from Amazon. I also like the Hair Made Easy gold needles, and then I also have some from the Sally's Beauty Supply as well. So it's all about just finding a needle that works for you, and one that's thin enough. I don't like needles that are too thick, because then I find that sometimes it can catch as you're going through the pockets of hair. So I'm going to thread my needle, and then I'm just going to tie the thread and knot it twice. The other way that you could do this when working with a single thread is by using a little bit of super glue. That way you don't have to knot it, but it's so easy to just do that quick little knot. So now that's all prepped, I can go in and start my install. So using my pliers, these are different ones from Hair Made Easy. These are definitely my preferred ones, just because the grooves are smooth, so they don't chip the bead, and then I find them a lot easier to work with when I'm unclamping the bead. So I'm just going to go in, unclamp my bead, and then with my needle, I'm actually going to go up through that bead. I'll pull that through all the way, and then I'm going to go up 1 more time. Then I'll bring it up and just clamp it into place, and then just pull to make sure everything is nice and secure. All right, so now I'm going to carry that thread across, just hold it with my thumb, and then I'm going to drop down through that first pocket, bring my needle halfway, and then I'll wrap my thread around 2 times. That's going to make sure that everything is nice and secure. And I pull it securely, but not super tight. You don't want to make it so tight where you're going to struggle then doing your move ups. And now I can just fold this piece over, and I'm going to just take my pliers and pinch where I want that. This just helps keep everything from bubbling up. So I'll just pinch it. I want it to meet the end of that pocket of hair there. And then with my clip, I'll just clip that down into place. And then with this one, I'll do the same thing. I'll just grab a clip and just put it there for now. And then I can take it out later. Now again, carrying my thread across, dropping that needle down through that pocket of hair, working right towards the edge of that weft. And then I'm just going to wrap it around 1-2 times, pulling it up to secure. Now I can take that clip out, and then I'm going to carry my thread across, and I'm just going to do 1 stitch through the weft itself, because I want to make sure that I'm not carrying it across so far that I'm creating like a gap within my stitch work. Now again, carrying it across, and then I can go through this pocket of hair here. I always like to keep my stitches close to the bead and get in as much of that natural hair as possible. That way you're going to find you have a lot more support. Again, carrying across, and now I'm just going to do a stitch through the wefts themselves. Got 2 wefts here now, pulling up to secure, carrying my thread across, dropping my needle down through the pocket and pulling it up to secure. So now we've come to this area here. Just going to unclip this clip, and I'll unclip these ones. And you can see now, look, I'm starting to feed in that next weft. To make sure I catch it, let me just put that clip there. So you can see that little edge there. So I want to make sure now I'm incorporating that in, and I'll catch that with my thread, pull up to secure. So then now when I drop my needle down, I know I have to pick up 1, 2, 3 layers of weft. Removing the clips as I go. 1, 2, 3 layers of weft, and then now you can see I've got a 4th weft that I want to start incorporating in. So now I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4 layers of weft, pull up to secure. And then now I can start to just remove some of those beads because I don't want them to get in the way. So now, as you can see, I remove some of those clips because they're getting in the way. So if they are getting in the way, you just remove them. Now I'll drop my needle down, again making sure I'm picking up all 4 layers of those weft, pulling up to secure. 1, 2, 3, 4. Removing that clip, 4 layers. And then now we're finishing with this layer. I'll just drop through here, catch that layer. Because this is exposed on the outside, it's going to be more likely to catch and for that stitch to kind of undo itself and for this to flap. So to make sure that that's really locked down, I'm just going to wrap my thread around the needle 1 time just to create a slightly more secure blanket stitch, and then that will just lock that end piece. So now when I'm doing my stitches through this pocket, I'm only going to have 3 layers now because we've just finished that 4th layer. Now I want to show you how I position my hands. So I carry my thread across. Can you see with my thumb, I'm keeping it really, really close to the spine of the weft. And then when I drop my needle down through the pocket, I'm using my thumb to stop the needle going too far down. If it goes too far down, you might accidentally create a split in your weft. So you want to make sure that you keep your stitches really, really high and tight and close to the spine. So let me show you what I mean. So if you drop that stitch too far down and come up, you're going to create that split and disconnect in the weft. So to keep control and to keep your stitches really, really nice and clean looking, I'm going to make sure that I'm catching that with my thumb. I'm working really close to the spine of the weft. This is my top tip to getting those stitches looking really clean and neat and not long. With your Genius Weft stitches, because the spine is so thin, your stitches should mimic that. They should look short in length. The more uniform your beaded foundation is as well, the more uniform your stitches are going to look. And then again, just removing clips as I go, catching all 3 layers of the weft. And the reason that I do this extra stitch here, not through the pockets of hair, just through the wefts themselves, is because imagine with these, you're building all these different layers and they're not sewn together beforehand. We're sewing together the wefts and layers as we put them in the hair. So we want to make sure that we've got that stitch there to secure secure those layers. Otherwise, it might be inclined to ripple or bubble or be easy to catch. So again, making sure that we're getting that install as secure as possible and keeping it flat and flush to the head. We want our installs to be durable and stand the test of time. If possible, most of my clients, of course, if they have finer hair, you have to do one move up and then usually a reinstall. But if they have medium to thick hair, a lot of the time I can get 2 move ups out of their installs before I have to go in and do a reinstall. Dropping my needle down, making sure I'm catching all 3 layers, keeping that stitch super duper close to the spine of the weft. You can see now we're coming towards the end, which is great. That's why I love wefts. I feel like once you get it down, there's such a quick method to install. So I feel like you could easily do a row in 30 minutes. So then that's a full head in an hour. And then once you know, cut and blend, maybe like an hour and a half. 2 layers here, and then again just want to make sure I'm catching this little layer, and I'm just gonna wrap my thread one time, pull up to secure. I can remove that now, put that there. Gonna do my stitch right next to that bead, and now we are at the final few stitches. So what's important to remember is the way that we start is the way we want to finish. So how I'm going to finish is exactly how I started, and then that was by dropping my needle down through this pocket and wrapping the thread around it 2 times, and then pulling up to secure. I'm just going to put that out the way now, because now what I want to do is fold this back on itself and finish off. So as you can see, it's kind of stretched out a little bit. So I've got a lot of corner left here, which is what I knew. So then that's why I choose to fold it over right at the end to make sure that this isn't sitting too far over. So now I can fold it back on itself, and I want it to just line up with that end pocket. I'll just crimp it, and then I can just pin it into place. And then now I'm going to lock that corner down, drop my needle down through the pocket of hair, making sure I'm catching end of that weft, and then wrapping the thread 1-2 times, and then just pulling that up to secure. And that's locked down that corner. And then again, I'm just going to do a stitch only through the weft itself, not through the pocket of hair, because I want to make sure that these stitches aren't stretched too far and create a gap, which is easy to catch with your comb or your hairbrush. Then I'm just going to go through this pocket of hair here, doing blanket stitches all the way around. And now that I've got some wefts, I'm just going to go through the wefts themselves, not the pockets of hair. Just in those last few stitches, I had to kind of repeat through the pocket because the beads are exposed and there wasn't enough layers. Now that I have more layers, I can just go through the wefts themselves. That way I'm not having to do too many stitches through those pockets of hair. So I'm just kind of like pushing back, doing my stitches, keeping everything uniform. And then now I'm going to begin my anchoring stitches. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3 right here. And then right on this corner here, I'm going to go again 1, 2, 3. And then now I'm just going to do blanket stitch here and a blanket stitch here. And then I'm just going to tuck that thread, the needle through here so that it brings the thread behind that foundation. And then I'm going to show you how I like to finish this so that that single thread stays nice and secure and you're not going to snag it or make it unravel. So I'll take these clips out. I'm going to take my comb and I'm just going to lift up that layer of weft and I'm just going to pin that out the way. And then now I'll isolate where that bead is, and with my pliers I'm just going to unclamp that bead. So remember how we started where we were threading that thread through the bead? I'll do the same here, but this time I'm going to go down through the bead, and then again one more time I'll go down through the bead, and then I'm just going to pull up, making sure everything's nice and secure, and then I can just trim off that excess thread. So once I've finished the install, or you know, row by row I'll do this, I like to flip up the weft and just check that I don't have any little crosshairs. So I want to make sure that I've not picked up any hair that doesn't need to be in there. Sometimes your stitches, if you drop your needle too far, you accidentally pick up this hair under here. So then when you go through, you want to make sure that you don't have any of that caught in between. And then I'll just turn her around and do the same on this side. And let's do a little flip up. And that is your beautiful Genius Weft hidden row. Super comfortable, super lightweight, and you don't have any of those beads exposed. Thank you guys for joining me for another video. If you like this type of content, don't forget to like and subscribe. I am always posting educational content specifically for hair extensions. Leave me a comment down below. What was your favorite part of this video? And did you have one of those aha moments?